Since the dawn of the 21st century, scientific discovery has rushed forward at lightning speed. Genetics, physics, computerized technology, robotics, virtual reality. Join Derek and Sharon Gilbert as they uncover the truths behind this ultimate scientific deception. Welcome to SciFriday.
We're talking turkey because it's... Welcome to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our home, everyone. We love having you here. Get your, just relax. Get your kids, get your tea, get coffee, cocoa, whatever. And join us, and I'm looking to see if this is in a weird spot.
Nope.
It. Okay, good. Because if we don't want it in a weird spot.
Yes.
So today we teased last week that we were going to talk about Turkey and Israel this week, and the Turkey part is now.
Yes. This is a site that we're not going to see it when we go to Turkey next or in the fall, but we will see artifacts from this site. I'm talking about Karahan Tepe.
I know I wanted to go there, but isn't that close to the fighting or something?
Well, it's not been improved for tourists to visit, and it's still an active dig site. But so is Göbekli Tepe, which we will see.
I know, but that is... active for tourists. It's actually probably even got bathrooms, which is really nice.
Yes.
And they've got covered areas, and they're all set.
Protecting the dig site. What archaeologists are finding in Turkey is that Göbekli Tepe and Karahan Tepe are part of a much larger region of ritual sites that date back more than 10,000 years. Karahan Tepe is even older than Göbekli Tepe. It's been estimated at about 11,400 years old. Now, we recognize that if you're a Bible-believing Christian, and especially if you're a young earth creationist, that these numbers will be completely out of whack with the biblical narrative.
Well,
we
with
understand
Usher's
that.
Numbers.
With Archbishop Usher's, right. And we understand that. We understand that. We're using the numbers that archaeologists, secular archaeologists use, because we would like to show them how the narrative of history, the sequence of events fits with the biblical narrative. Karahan Tepe is older than Göbekli Tepe. Mm-hmm. It dates to the Neolithic period. What's really striking about these sites is that this is a period of human history when we were supposed to essentially be cavemen. Hunters-gatherers, except that they're finding that there was organized civilization in southeastern Turkey at that time, that they built these huge sites. There's an author by the name of Sean Thomas.
Massive pillars that were like 12 feet tall or something.
And some even bigger than that, and artistic representations of animals and humans.
I guess 5 meters is more than 12 feet. It's like 15, 16.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing thing that more or less rewrites our understanding of human history.
It does, because how do you organize Neanderthals to sit around and, get together and work as one? People
just scuffling to get by, living in caves, barely haven't invented the wheel yet, no pottery, and yet they have a civilization that allowed them to build these magnificent structures. Now, a fellow by the name of Sean Thomas, who's written a novel about Göbekli Tepe under the pseudonym Tom Knox.
You and I are reading it right now.
Right, called The Genesis Secret. It's one of those where this discovery, blows the Bible out of the water. Okay, the theology's not right, but the archaeology that he writes about is correct.
It's sort of Dan Brownish.
It's a little dated now because of new discoveries at places like Karahan Tepe, which he described in an article that he wrote for The Spectator in the UK as stupefyingly big.
Yeah.
Stupefyingly big. It's only been 1% excavated, and yet it's already a really large site, which means there was a large organized civilization in that part of the world long before Abraham walked on this earth.
It was more than a temple site. This was part of a massive metropolis.
Yes.
They have now found evidence of dwelling places where there were cities.
Right, and that was the thing that they didn't find before. They thought that this was strictly a religious complex because they didn't find any evidence of human dwellings, but this has now been debunked. They're finding human dwellings nearby.
What? The science wasn't settled?
The science wasn't settled. Karahan Tepe is about 25 miles southeast of Göbekli Tepe. They're both in the neighborhood of Haran, which was Abraham's hometown, near a town called Sanliurfa, which is one of the candidates for Ur of the Chaldees, Ur Kasdim in the Bible.
And we will go there
because there's an archaeology museum at Sanliurfa that has artifacts from Karahan Tepe. Now, what's really intriguing about Karahan Tepe, just last fall, they discovered an alignment, a winter solstice sunrise alignment in the arcs, in the rocks there, the architecture of Karahan Tepe. They've also, however, found evidence of, at Göbekli Tepe, a skull cult. A skull cult. And this is something that continued on through that period of history, the Neolithic in Jericho, which is way to the south of Turkey, obviously. There was something venerated about human skulls. They were cult objects. And near Karahan Tepe is another site called Kayanu, where archaeologists have found a building that they've dubbed the Skull Temple because it's got a bunch of human skulls there that were apparently removed from people who weren't willing to give them up, based on the residue of human blood, lots of human blood.
Volunteers to give up your skulls.
Yeah. So what was going on in that period of history? All we can do is speculate, but apparently this is the pre-flood world. And when you're sacrificing humans, as at Kayanu, it's clearly, there's no other way to describe it. You can't be politically correct. It's evil.
And the truth is that most Christian tours, if they go to Turkey, they just go to the 7 churches of Revelation, perhaps to Istanbul. Most of them aren't going to take you to Göbekli Tepe, Sanliurfa, do an archaeological review, so to speak, plus doing the 7 churches and Istanbul.
Right, and that's why Doug Hershey, the founder of Ezra Adventures, is so excited to go on this tour with us. And of course, you can join us. All of the information is online at skywatchinturkey.com, skywatchinturkey.com. But of course, you can also scan the QR code that I have popped up on the screen here without even knowing how I'm doing it. It's in post-production. But you can scan that with the camera on your smartphone. It'll take you to the website. The complete itinerary is there, as well as a breakdown of costs. This will be a relatively small tour, 24 or so, as we go and look at the history in a part of the world that is more biblically connected than we've been taught. And of course, with the churches of Revelation, more prophetically significant than most churches teach. So we hope and pray that you'll join us in Turkey come October.
That would be wonderful. Skywatchinturkey.com. But did you know that Turkey donated a replica of one of the big T-shaped standing stones to the United Nations?
I did not.
Göbekli Tepe is, since 2018, a World Heritage Site, which means the UN gets to tell Turkey, well, who tells Erdogan what to do?
Right.
Theoretically, the UN gets to tell Turkey what to do with the site and who may and may not go in there. Right now it's open for tourists. But one of those, that replica, maybe the very one, I think is going to Oman for a game in the near future. In other words, this replica, and perhaps others, may start, touring the world.
That is amazing.
These stones aren't just blanks. They have carvings on them.
Right, representing humans or at least humanoid figures.
And the truth is, we really don't know what these are. The one thing that is obvious, though, is that they're not strictly animals or strictly human. They appear to be a combination of the two. And some of the imagery is, frankly, X-rated.
Yeah, very disturbing. Well, that's the pre-flood world, and perhaps one of the reasons why God sent a big flood to wipe it out. But just one of 11 sites in an area 128 miles across being excavated now by archaeologists in Turkey. And again, we'll be there come October, and we hope you can join us. But there's more exciting discoveries in the Holy Land. And a few weeks back, we had the opportunity to talk with our friend Dr. Doug Petrovich about one of those that connects to one of the most miraculous events in the Old Testament. And we'll tell you about that when SciFriday continues. Jesus told his followers to love our God with all of our hearts, souls, and minds. And that's what we try to do every week here at Gilbert House Ministries. This program is an outreach of our ministry. Every week, we search through the mysteries of end times prophecy on Unraveling Revelation. We look at the nexus of science and the supernatural on SciFriday. We study the Bible verse by verse in chronological order at the Gilbert House Fellowship. And each week, I interview fascinating guests on my podcast, A View from the Bunker. Producing that much content takes time. Serving up that much audio and video costs money, and so we depend on your support. You can support us in a couple of ways. First, you can donate through our website at gilberthouse.org, or you can contact us through the U.S. mail. Gilbert House Ministries, P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633. And you can shop at our online store, a sort of a virtual book table, where during the month of June, you can save 20% on every one of Sharon's 7 novels in her series of supernatural thrillers, The Red Wing Saga. Just use promo code JUNE20 at checkout. That's JUNE20. We are grateful for your help in fulfilling our mission. We thank you for your prayers and your support. Welcome back to SciFriday. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Got my tea here. Boy, I'll tell you what. Doug is on fire. I love his emotion.
Yes.
When he starts talking about some of his favorite topics, he gets a little teary-eyed.
He does, and that's easy to understand. When you're talking about
You
our
would
Lord
never
and
do
Savior.
that.
In my recent presentation in Colorado Springs, I held myself to only crying 3 times during the talk. But there's a bit of pottery that was discovered some time back with some writing on it that helps shed some light on the conquest of Canaan. Dr. Doug Petrovich. So, Doug, a 3,400-year-old milk bowl. How is this changing the standard narrative or the understanding that archaeologists have had of the history of Canaan and Israel?
Yeah, that's a great question, Derek. And certainly a milk bowl, you would think that's about as insignificant as you can get, right? But the question really is about where it was found, when it dates to, and what is the context in which all of this took place. And it's related to the city of Lachish. Lachish is, in the Canaanite period, it was the second largest city in all of Canaan to Hatzor. And then when Hatzor was destroyed, probably it became number 1. It's in the Shvelah, which is the foothills between a little bit in the south of Israel, between the coastal plain and the central mountain spot. So Lachish was a really important city. It guarded all the passes that go up into the hill country. And so anyone traveling from Egypt or from Africa, more or less, is going to almost certainly pass by Lachish. And so it was a strategic site. And the milk bowl that was found there, the great part about it, it dates to the period known as Late Bronze Age 1B, which essentially ends around 1400 BC. We don't have an exact date for that. That's the number most often assigned, 1400 BC. And of course, biblical chronology, if taken literally and carefully factored, would figure that 1406 to 1400 BC is the time period of the actual conquest under Joshua. So this milk bowl dates to the destruction of the site right about at the end, just near the end of the final occupation phase at Lachish. So it's connected to the story in the book of Joshua in chapter 10 that describes the conquest of Lachish. And that is by Joshua and the Israelites. And it says that it takes them 2 days to conquer. Unlike the next city on the itinerary, it's Eglon, that takes 1 day. And it's because Lachish is such a great site, such a powerful city.
So big, thick walls that you would not be able to knock down with, just your typical group of nomadic shepherds or whatever would have a little difficulty getting past the walls of a city like Lachish.
Right. Even a small army would have more than its hands full. Mm-hmm. So the find is just inside the city wall on the western side. So that wall on the western side goes north-south, and it's about halfway between north and south. And right there in the wall, there was a breach. And that was found by the archaeologists in where they excavated. This is called Area S. And so as they excavated, they found this breach. And just inside the city wall, there is a house with several rooms that attaches to the city wall. So the city wall is a common wall for that house. And just inside that's the city wall there, inside that house, not on the floor level, but there's some debris, and then there's a burnt layer, so that's charred remains. And on top of the charred remains was sitting this inscription of all places.
What is it about this this find that connects it to Joshua and the Hebrews, and how big is the piece?
The piece is small. It's probably only about that size, roughly. But the connection it has with the Israelites is it's actually a Hebrew inscription in a script that's not used in Canaan by anyone else besides the Hebrews, especially for this time period. It's not a Canaanite script. It's often falsely called a Canaanite or Proto-Canaanite script. It's not. It's the same Hebrew script that derives from their time in Egypt. But what's written on it is fascinating. Are the words in clear Hebrew, servant or slave, over or in charge of honey. So servant in charge of honey is the reading. The original archaeologists translated the first word and the last word. The second word has a couple of partial letters. It's 2 letters long, and the letters are partial, but they're 2/3 to 3/4 full, so you can identify them with certainty. And for whatever reason, those who published this in 2021, they didn't include an attempt to translate the middle word and therefore try to give the meaning for the inscription. But I noticed right away that it's the preposition al, which means on, upon, or over. And a short time after that, I saw a colleague in the field named Orly Goldwasser from Hebrew University, and she came to the same conclusion independently of me. So, 2 different scholars independently come to the same conclusion. Well, the irony, Derek, of the meaning of the inscription and the fact that it's on a milk bowl is, what did God say when he was predicting what the Holy Land would be like? For
a land of milk and honey.
Yeah, a land flowing with milk and honey. So how ironic that a servant in charge of honey would be on a milk bowl. And here's the significance. Here's how it works. I would suggest that somewhere along the way, either in Transjordan before the Israelites entered Canaan, or more likely from the time they were at Ai and following, when they would go to city by city with Jericho, they weren't allowed to take anything for themselves. All they could take was silver and gold and metal for God. And it would be deposited into the temple treasury, or the sanctuary treasury with a tabernacle. But they couldn't take anything. Once they got to Ai, though, they were able to start confiscating the remains, the booty, which includes probably wine, for sure grain, because it was the harvest season, and all kinds of other items, including, evidently, honey. And when Joshua would have administrated what's going to happen with all of this, you collect the city's honey supply. Well, what do? You put it in the hands of one of your men and make him in charge. So this is like a business card. And this guy, every site they went to, any honey that was found, he would have collected it and added it to the storage inventory of honey, and they would have carted it with them on their travels, evidently. And he would have, as people needed it, he'd pull it out and give them a cup full or whatever of honey, and they would use it as they would go. So this was a business card, and evidently what would have happened is when the group of Israelites, God somehow, we don't know the story, it's not articulated, God brought down the walls on the second day. The Israelites would have gone in, and as with everywhere else, and this is described even in Joshua 10, this very account, they killed off all the people, men, women, children, and animals, and evidently they did a little burning, not maybe the whole city as they did with Jericho and Ai and Hatzor. We don't know for sure, but a little bit in this area at least did some burning. And so they go in, they get their way in through the wall. There's a little burning that takes place. They go in, they kill all the people, they collect all the goods, and that's going to take some time. That's not a 15-minute job. It's a big city. So once the process is over, the guy who collects the honey, he's got his jug full of honey or whatever, and he's walking out with it. And where does he go? He walks right out through the breach that they used to enter through the city wall. And as he goes, whether purposefully or accidentally, he drops his business card right before he walks through the city wall. And there it lays right on the burnt material. and he goes, and the Israelites don't return for several generations. They don't return to the site of Lachish, and they just let it do its thing. So, incredible story, right?
So they took the city, or they destroyed the city, but they did not occupy the city. Why would they just let it go?
Yeah. We don't know if they destroyed the entire city or if there was just destruction at their entry points.
Okay.
Right? So it's very possible, very plausible that the city remained kind of as they were instructed. They were told that in most cases they were going to be taking cities that they did not build, right? So God was giving them the opportunity to kill the people and move into the city. But the Israelites didn't like that narrative, that model. They were semi-nomads, which they learned in the desert. So rather than taking for themselves this city, they just moved on. And when the conquest was done, they really didn't go into the cities that they had freed up. They just stayed tent dwellers and kind of moved around with their flocks throughout the hill country.
What is the significance of this find, the dating of the find, and also the existence of this early Hebraic script, circa 1400 BC? How does this change our understanding of the history of Israel?
It reinforces that biblical chronology, as literally taken, is correct with the timing of the conquest, because secular archaeologists and biblical scholars have told us that if there was a conquest, and Exodus, as we believe, we take the Bible literally. Not all of them do, but the ones who say that this did happen, they would date it to the 13th century BC. But this helps show, because a number of us have been screaming to the world, hey, the conquest happened when the Bible said it did, just as with the Exodus. It's just we didn't have the evidence before to back it up. Now we have the evidence to back it up with my two books, kind of leading the way with the Exodus and the time in the sojourn in Egypt. But this now affirms what we've been saying all along, that based on the destructions of cities in Canaan, we can validate that the conquest happened. But there was never the kind of smoking gun evidence to affirm that. There were destructions, but people could say, well, that's, Canaanites killing off other Canaanites. That's all it is. Now we have the smoking gun, Derek, and that smoking gun is a Hebrew inscription. Canaanites aren't going to be writing Hebrew inscriptions at the end of the 15th century BC. So that's the significance of the find in relation to kind of the conquest in biblical history. But then the second part of your question, what about the script? The script is an amazing intermediary form between the very pictographic Hebrew alphabetic script that we see in Egypt and Sinai from 1842 BC all the way down to 1446 BC, which evolves over time. It becomes more abstract, less pictographic as time goes along. And then a perfect snapshot is how the letters are written. This is called paleography, the study of forms of writing. It fits perfectly in how you would envision that the evolution of the script over time would kind of be 40 years later after the Exodus, because we have inscriptions from the year of the Exodus and around that period just before. And for example, a perfect example is the letter Ayin, which means I, E-Y-E, which in the earlier periods was this ovular with the points on the end shaped just like a human eye, but and sometimes that eye was depicted with a pupil in the middle, right? Then not the eye, I'm sorry, it's the mouth, which is the same. That's what tripped me up. The mouth is the same shape as the eye earlier in Israel's history, and sometimes the pupil distinguishes it, the eye from the mouth. So the mouth is just that football shape, and in the earlier times in Egypt. But then on this inscription, you take away half of it and a little more than half, and you have this bow here, and then a little closer to a straight line here with an angle, and that's now the form of the eye. You don't need the whole eye. If you just have the corner of it, which is faster and easier to draw, then you represent the entire concept of the eye, and you can pronounce the consonant that's behind it, which is a guttural letter that we don't really have in English.
Yeah, glottal stop.
So, yeah. And then as we look at inscriptions that are in the later late Bronze Age and into the Iron Age, so into the period of the judges going into the monarchy in Israel's history, we see those same letters kind of become even less pictographic. So it becomes a perfect snapshot of this intermediary form that we would kind of, if we could draw it up perfectly to envision what it would be like at that time, this is it. Just the perfect medium.
Well, that is just amazing that this little potsherd connects to that event, Joshua's long day. The city of Lachish was where Joshua and the Israelites went after defeating the Amorite Confederation in the Valley of Ajalon. And this little piece found there at the breach in the wall made by the Israelites.
Yes, this gentleman who kept the honey, this is a little calling card, may have seen the sun stand still.
I know. That makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up, or it would if I, didn't try to shave it off, so I didn't. But it's a remarkable thing that we've got not only that connection, but the documentation that the Hebrews had writing centuries before secular scholars want to credit them with that skill, which means, of course, that Moses and the scribes who worked for Moses and Joshua could have recorded all of this and written the first 5 books of the alphabet.
Oh, exactly.
So, of course, Doug wrote about that in his book, The World's Oldest Alphabet, and was featured in the documentary The Moses Controversy by Timothy Mahoney, talking about that. Again, archaeology disproving the skeptics and confirming the stories that we have in the Bible. And they're doing it with the scientific method. Science is not contradictory to the Bible. It just helps us better understand God's creation.
It will. I love biblical archaeology. And if you are watching, young person, and you're wondering, what am I going to do when I grow up? How about going into science, going into archaeology? Take the Bible in one hand, a spade in the other, and go out and follow the clues, just like many of these archaeologists have, going all the way back to the 17th, 18th century. And they were called antiquarians then. And most of them were scholars, but also pastors.
Yes.
They were bishops and priests, and they were going out to find out what the Lord left in the land.
And sometimes it's a slow, painstaking process. Certainly we have not been called to go climbing into caves in Qumran in the desert or some such, but God bless those who do, because each little discovery continues to build more support, more evidence for what we profess as our faith in our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And that's why we do this program. And we thank you for watching. This is SciFriday.
SciFriday is a viewer-supported outreach of Gilbert House Ministries. Follow us online at scifriday.tv and gilberthouse.org. That's where you'll find our weekly Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship. Join us each week as we go through the Bible verse by verse in chronological order. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us through our websites or drop us a line at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633.